Hey guys, welcome to Platitude US History. Today I am out by the pool instead of in my office making this video because it's 90 degrees out in October, so why not, right? But today I'm here to talk about the origination of our political party system and talk about how our first two political parties even began. So, if you think about this, despite a long history of political and governmental experience in the colonies, after the Revolution, many Americans really struggled with and were unprepared to take politics to a national level. They were so used to the state and local level, they didn't even know what it looked like to take it to the national level. So politicians now had to balance competing sections, interests, philosophies, and put it all into one place so that they could really create the largest political base. So our embryonic stage, that very first attempt at a national level, we're going to have our Federalists, named after the federal form of government that they advocated and supported. They believed in the idea of federalism, and so they were pro-constitution. Federalism, to be clear, is this idea of a shared burden of power. So you have your federal government, your central government, that's going to be your strongest. It's going to have the most powers. Then you have your state government that's going to have almost as much power as the federal government, but not quite as much, just because of that supremacy clause. And then you're going to have your local governments that are going to have the least amount of power. They still have power, though, and sharing that burden of power is really, I believe, what has led to longevity of our governmental system. Now, on the other side of that are going to be the Anti-Federalists, and the Anti-Federalists are basically the opposite of the Federalists. The Federalists were elites. They were the wealthy. They believed in supporting propertied, moneyed classes being the leaders. It was closer, their ideal of government was closer to an oligarchy where the few led the many. And the Anti-Federalists were the opposite. They were usually considered the lower classes. They basically opposed the Constitution. They believed that the wealthy would create a snobocracy and not a democracy, because the Federalists were very hostile to the expansion of democracy. And they did not want, the common man to really have a say, because they didn't feel he was educated or propertied or wealthy enough, or whatever the reasons, Alright, so we have this constitutional debate. Unfortunately for the Anti-Federalists, the Constitution is ratified, especially after James Madison will include the Bill of Rights in the first 10 amendments. After that, the Anti-Federalists as a political party will go away because, their only real issue was the ratification of the Constitution, or opposing the ratification of the Constitution. And so once it's ratified, their entire platform is kind of moot. But now we have to deal with actual problems on the national level, because now we have a national government that is actually worth something or does something. So our Federalists are still that merchant class. They are Hamiltonian Federalists, especially. His ideal was that they would really be the ruling class, the merchant class, the wealthy class, versus our Democratic Republicans. And this is, you can shorten them to Dem Republicans or Dem Republicans. That's funny. Anyway, or just Republicans. But these guys are usually made up of yeoman farmers. They are Jefferson's ideal, Thomas Jefferson's ideal, where it's really this a party that advocates for the common man. And he believed in this idea of an educated mass of people, and that would be the ideal democracy and the expansion of democracy. And by the time Washington actually leaves office, the two parties, they looked very much like today, complete with name-calling and mudslinging. And that's where we're at. So Let's look at their platform. So the Federalists believed in an elitism still. They still believed in that powerful ruling class. They wanted a powerful central government over states' rights. They believed in a very loose interpretation of the Constitution, meaning they used the elastic clause often to create bureaucracy, to create structures within the government that they felt would be helpful for the national government to really lay claim to a large amount of power. They were pro-business, so a lot of the laws and legislation that they would push for or pass would be something that would be helpful to the businessmen and the merchant class. They, especially things like protective tariffs, and we talked about protective tariffs. They can be very dangerous for the middle class and poor because it leads to artificial inflation, pricing out many groups within or sectors of the economy. They are pro-British because of long-standing trade agreements, long-standing cultural connections. They believed that the British were a more solid, both economic and military ally. They believed in a national debt because the national debt really created what they thought was unity. It made the states beholden to them. I don't really see how that works. Also, a larger national debt leads to inflation with the idea that that inflation will make it easier to pay off loans. But it's problematic. They believed in a Bank of the United States. They believed in having that national bank to really create a solid currency and monetary policy for the entire nation. They believed in a strong navy because they wanted to protect shipping, because remember, they are pro-business, they are pro-merchant class, and those two groups of people are really concerned with shipping. Shipping is their way of life. Now, the Democratic-Republicans, on the other hand, they believed in a weak central government. They wanted the central government to have some power, not like the Articles of Confederation where it was totally useless, but really the states ruled. And they believed in a strict interpretation of the Constitution, and the basis for that is the 10th Amendment, where anything not explicitly stated was a federal power is a power that is reserved for the states. They were pro-farmer. They didn't believe in tariffs. They didn't believe in artificial inflation. They were pro-French because they felt that the French helped them out in the Revolution, and they felt like the French were better off with their ideals. Plus, the French are anti-British, and we just fought the Revolutionary War to get away from the British, right? They didn't believe in national debt. They believed in paying off all debt as soon as possible. They didn't believe in a national bank. They believed that states should have state banks that controlled monetary policy within the state. And they believed in a weak navy for coastal defense only. Because to have a strong navy, what inevitably happens is we would compete and we could potentially try and colonize other places, which would make our country very hypocritical. So those are our first two major parties. I'll see you next time. Maybe inside, maybe outside. Who knows? Bye, guys.